So as commerce increases and e-commerce receives advancements thanks to COVID and the new ways of payments we're seeing globally, we envisage that there'll be a lot of advances in the next 10 years. There would now be a thin line between the ways of commerce, the physical forms of commerce, and online is expected to grow. It is projected that by 2024, e-commerce worldwide should have reached about $7 trillion. Now we see that in Sub-Saharan Africa, this method is also changing in emerging markets. In next 10 years, we envisage that customers would be more interested in the ease of payment than actually in the methods of payment. As customers become more sophisticated, they would want an end-to-end experience where they're able to combine things like the selection of price items, comparison, selection of items, and a one-click payment gateway that allows them checkout faster than they ever would.
I think that commerce in Africa by the end of the decade will look very different from the way it looks now. I think it will be primarily socially driven and decentralized, as opposed to having like very large players that have monopolies over certain verticals as we see today in some African cities. I think people prefer to buy and sell to and from people that they know. So social commerce activity is going to grow, very similar to how it's growing in parts of Southeast Asia and China. As long as the payment mechanisms and logistics mechanisms to facilitate these types of businesses are available, I think African entrepreneurs are going to take advantage of the massive opportunity that exists for social commerce on the continent.
I think it's going to be very different. We're moving and growing so quickly, and right now there are so many startups that are dedicated to seeing this space succeed. So from encountering hybrid models where you find offline businesses moving online to just overall increasing the amount of trade that's happening on the continent. I think if we play our cards right, 10 years from now, we'll be in a position where Africa will be trading as a powerhouse, and we'll be seeing extreme levels of intercontinental trade between Africa as a continent and the rest of the world.
I think the building blocks that will enable growth of commerce in general and e-commerce in particular are the basic ones to start with. You've got population is there, okay. You've got income, so per capita income. 3, you have economic drivers, so drivers of productive activity in an economy, be they different sectors, manufacturing, agriculture, services, construction, all those activities that create economic activity. Those are the basic fundamental building blocks. And then you have the amplifiers, which are, you've got access to internet, you also have access to mobile subscriptions, you have platforms, and people are able to move goods and information very freely. Finally, regulation, very important. Regulatory environment has to be such that supports the growth of commerce going forward.
So all in all, I think the commerce opportunity that exists for the continent is very exciting. We have pretty much one of the youngest demographics globally that is growing at an ever-increasing rate. So 10 years from now, will be an even bigger population with even bigger consumer and business needs. And that opportunity is wide open for whoever wants to take it and grow and benefit from it. So it's really an exciting time, and all of these digital payment methods and other technology tools that we're building will only help to fuel this growth.
I can share some of the things that we're doing in this space. Like Paystack is very bullish about accelerating the amount of digital commerce that's happening on the continent. So for one, we're helping businesses start and scale their efforts. So if you want to get started and you're not sure how, we have a plethora of tools and services you can access. We help you accept payments from everybody everywhere in the world. And then we help you grow your business. So different initiatives and this could be anything from letting you know how to manage your finances to providing tools for automated reconciliation, teaching you how to take the best pictures if you're selling physical goods, and just exposing you to expertise in the space so that you can continue to grow your business along those lines. I think one other thing that we do is focus on exposing businesses on the continent to global payment methods. So if there's a way that people in Latin America, for example, would like to pay, one of the commitments we give our merchants is we will make sure that however your customers want to pay you is available on Paystack. So we're bullish about exposing your business to all of those payment methods as well. And then for new entrants into the e-commerce space, we're making it easier for you to sell online using our storefronts or plugins. And given that a large percentage of this demographic is mobile, we're moving to provide even more capabilities that are mobile first.
Chipper Cash, being the largest smartphone-first cross-border mobile money provider on the continent today, we are very bullish on the idea of social commerce and its implications for Africa for the future. We're developing a product called the Chipper Network API, which will allow merchants to collect and disburse from all Chipper users across the entire Chipper network, as well as developing features that will allow peer-to-peer sales to take place through escrow. So the Chipper Network API is already available for merchants today, and the next features that I described should be available in the coming year or two.
So some of the strategic initiatives we're taking over the next decade as we see the change in commerce is starts from when we released the 2019 XEMEA tracker, where we looked at the impact of the pandemic on the countries and the merchants in Africa. Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa have been known to be huge e-commerce base. And so we looked at the impact and we realized that behavior was shifting. There were less people going to the supermarkets. About 67% of people prefer to shop online. They prefer to buy in bulk than actually going to the shops. And so in 2020, we also launched the Where You Shop Matters campaign, where we worked with small businesses to keep the lights on. We worked with our fintechs and the banks in order to have these merchants create e-commerce platforms. And we see that behavior growing and changing as the years progress.
I'm glad you said people came online. In other words, people came online because there was a specific problem that online was solving, okay, during the pandemic, which was predominantly around safety. People wanted to be able to get access to essential goods or services or whatever it is that they wanted to buy, but they also wanted to do it in a manner that was safe for them, okay. So online was solving a problem. That is also the recipe for how e-commerce and all that online businesses will keep consumers coming online, because fundamentally there's a problem that we are solving. Okay, that is the core of it. We're solving a problem of finding what you want to get. If we can do it much faster, you can get more choice when you come online, and you can get best prices when you come online, then consumers will always come online. It's not just a function of the pandemic, it's because fundamentally there's a problem that is being solved. And the more that e-commerce solves those kinds of problems, the more the suite of offerings that e-commerce has that is solving fundamental problems that consumers have, then consumers will always come online to e-commerce platforms.
I think some ways that stakeholders can improve financial inclusion in a market like ours is, first of all, providing access to credit. If I have an idea and I'm working as hard as I can, but my efforts are limited because I can't fund anything I'm trying to do, then I will always be constrained. Another thing I advocate for is exposing sellers to more consumers, ideally across the country, continent, or world. I always say that if you can only exchange goods and services with the people standing right in front of you, then the scope of your markets will always be limited. But if you can stay in your home and create something that somebody halfway across the world or across the continent is willing to pay you for, then all of a sudden you are exposed to a whole new level of growth, So I would say that, and then of course, efficient use of technology to automate your business, incentives and grants from like the government or larger organizations, and initiatives that improve logistics and supply chain management will definitely help people produce more and deepen financial inclusion in that space.
So for commerce to grow across Africa, the building blocks that have to be in place are, first, it has to be mobile-led. So we need to shift commerce and we need to shift banking and money movements from what we know it as traditionally to building an end-to-end mobile experience for commerce to thrive. We need to build cross-border. When we say cross-border, a lot of people just believe it's shopping in the US or Europe, but there are a lot of SME intra-African money movements and trade that is happening. Now, how do we ensure most currency flows and commerce is happening seamlessly between a consumer in Nigeria and a merchant in Kenya, for instance? We also need to think local and support SME initiatives like the Where You Shop Matters, where I mentioned earlier. We need to do more of this. But most importantly, we have to ensure that fraud controls are in place for the consumer and the merchant to be comfortable shopping, and also for them to have that understanding and awareness of how to be safe while shopping.
And what stakeholders need to keep doing is ensuring that online is solving problems. Online is not just the technology. No one goes online just for the sake of being online. People go online because there is something, there's a problem, there's something they're looking for that online solves, be it entertainment or buying or shopping or education or whatever. As long as stakeholders are building solutions that are solving fundamental problems, people will always be online. And that's the way that that's all stakeholders need to focus on. It's the solutions that are designed for the problems that people want to solve.
I think stakeholders can build better solutions that deepen financial inclusion for small, medium, and large businesses by first realizing that there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution that makes sense for the entire continent. The African continent is greatly fragmented from a cultural perspective, and because of that fragmentation, people have a different way of doing things. So because of that, whatever solutions are adopted have to be contextually aware of the environment and situation on the ground and be sensitive to the needs of the individuals in that specific country. So at some point, it might be possible to aggregate some of the market systems in these countries, but we first have to start by making the solutions work for the people on the ground.
The biggest growth indicators for commerce in emerging economies will typically be characterized by top-line growth in the amount of digital commerce that's happening in the relevant markets. Some of the leading indicators would be things like, internet penetration and the levels of financial inclusion, which would imply that people have money and can access, sellers that are just not in their immediate vicinity, but, across the market or region that we're talking about. And then on the other side, the typical growth indices would be economic outputs, unemployment rates. Like if all of us are making stuff and selling stuff, there's increased supply and hopefully increased demand as well. So all of these levers should, be trending towards the positive. And that's how I would say we can tell that there's an increase in, commerce happening in that space.
I think that's a very important question because it's around when you look at our environment. People often ask me, is it the infrastructure? Is it road network? Is it rail network? All of those are good enablers as well. But I think that the main thing today, when we still talk to consumers, is there's still a whole lot of space that requires education. Okay. People in the cities, people in tier 1, tier 3 cities, but there's still a significant portion of our population who just don't even know how to shop online. Okay, just that level of education, that level of training is required. We're doing it with our JForce, which is an agent network that we use to show people how to place orders or place orders on people's behalf. But that level of education, that's exactly where a lot of the growth opportunities still lie. On the seller side as well, there is still a lot of, if you look at the total number of SMEs that we have in Nigeria, and you look at the number that you have online, selling online, there's still significant capacity that is still left to bring more and more SMEs and merchants to be able to transact online. So those are, I wouldn't call them challenges, those are still opportunities for growth that are still there in our environment for e-commerce.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for joining us for that session, and thank you, Wiza and Nkebet, Juliet Anammah, and Khadijah. Unfortunately, Juliet won't be able to join us for the Q&A session. One of the really interesting things about the world that we're living in today is because remote work has become so prominent, so many more people are flung around the continent. So it's 5 a.m. wherever she is, so I'm not sure she'll be able to join us for this Q&A. Again, if you have questions for us, you should please go to slido.com, and if you use the code TCFOC, you'll be able to ask the people in this session any questions that you have. I can see that there are already a few, and the very first one of them is going to go to Wiza for Chipper Cash. And the question is, this person would like to learn more about the peer-to-peer escrow payment system that Chipper Cash is building. How is that process expected to work? Hi, Wiza.
Hey, Tomiwa. Can you hear me and see me okay?
I can hear and see you clearly.
Okay, awesome. I really love that question, and I wish that I could answer in detail, but like that product is under embargo, and that's as much as I could share. What I could suggest to Anonymous is that they can stay tuned to our blog at blog.chippercash.com, and they'll be amongst the first to know as when we release those features.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Yes, it does. I think what's interesting about this session is both us at TechCabal and the people in the audience want the keys to the kingdom. They want to know exactly how you're doing and what you're doing. So we'll try to get the greatest answers we can for everything, but there are some things that are, I think, trade secrets. There's a question here from David, and I'm going to ask Nkebet to maybe shed a bit more light about this. I think this is what most of the conversation up to now has been about. But it is, how do you see consumer behavior changing in e-commerce in Africa? And what technology specifically do you see powering those changes? Nkebet?
Hi, Tomiwa. Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly.
All right, great. Good morning, everyone. So behaviors we see changing are, COVID has made people come online and has also made lazy customers, right? So people want things faster, and people want less touch. So with e-commerce, I see behaviors changing, consumer behavior changing to one click. Okay. So there's going to be now a very thin line between online and offline. So e-commerce, as we think of it, would change. I can start on e-commerce, I can end offline. E-commerce would then be, I give you an example, me standing in front of a mirror, which is something we started to build at the Visa Innovation Studios, where I stand in front of a mirror, I put on the glasses, I see the way the clothes fit me, and I make a decision to buy it, even though I'm not at the store. So those are the kinds of technologies. We see AR will power that. We see virtual reality will power that. We see different innovations that are coming on that would power and change that consumer behavior and change the way we see e-commerce, from putting in my card, putting my PIN, to storing my card and having a one click that allows me just make payments everywhere and anywhere.
Excellent. I'm going to ask you a question that is, it's an interesting one. I don't know if there's anyone here that's super well positioned to answer it, but it's a question around sort of like government engagement or engaging with government around crypto. It's an interesting area. I guess, Nkebet, if you can give us your perspective, Wiza, if you can give us a perspective on how government is thinking or has publicly indicated that they're thinking about sort of crypto in the markets that you are operating in. But Nkebet, if you can give us your thoughts kind of on that.
So, Toma, when you say government, are you talking about the Nigeria government or governments generally
So
around the world?
I think this question is very specific about any big merchants engaging with the Nigerian government or the CBN around cryptocurrency. So if you can answer that, sure, we'll take it. If not, we'll take a broader answer on sort of, Nigerian government and crypto or governments broadly and crypto.
So I think we're going to get to when I'll start with Nigeria government and then I'll go to what we're doing globally. So I think Nigerian government, there's going to be a place where the digital currencies, and I'm not going to speak about crypto now. I'm going to speak about digital currencies. There'll be a place where digital currencies and regulation will sit side by side. On whether crypto is going to come back, we don't know. We're going to wait until policies accept that. Central bank has their good reasons for that. And so we're not there, so we can't speak about that. However, when it comes to what Visa has done, I mean, if everyone knows, we were the first payment scheme to sign on Coinbase and put in those rails between the handshake between crypto or digital currencies and card. And so what we do is we render thought leadership to central banks around the world on how to build the CBDCs and how to ensure that there's a play between the government and digital currencies, regardless of which they are.
Excellent. Wiza, can I ask you for an East African perspective on governments and crypto?
I think my view is very similar to what Nkebet has shared. I don't think that, I think that with the way that crypto operates right now, in the global scheme of things, there are a lot of inherent risks that regulators have to be mindful of in order to protect the economic systems. And in as much as, for us who are like technophiles, it's really exciting to see all of the opportunities that are unlocked because of it. It does create like a legitimate challenge for regulators at play. And in as much as we don't like to talk about it in the ecosystem, quite a little bit of illicit activity is being enabled because of cryptocurrencies present. So I think we are likely to see a move towards more digital currencies, like central bank digital currencies. I read about the e-Naira in TechCabal recently. I think that's going to be a model that many countries are going to try to emulate. And what digital currencies, I think, represent philosophically for me as an individual, in my personal capacity, is an opportunity for Africans to facilitate cross-border trade, for example, without having to rely on an intermediary currency like the US dollar, which is what we rely on right now. So I think, we may start to see trends inching towards that direction, but I think it's important to be cognizant of the realities that our regulators have to constantly manage. And it's very easy to say that the regulator just doesn't want to see this industry succeed, or they're not informed. Like, when you speak to people at regulatory institutes, you quickly realize that they are amongst some of the smartest people in finance globally. And there's a reason why they're trying to put in place some controls and visibilities around certain things, because you and I, who are using these types of tools legitimately, we don't see the other side of what happens and the other considerations that they have to make. So that's something that I think has to be highlighted more.
Fantastic. That's a much more pragmatic answer than I was expecting, I must say. And it definitely sheds a lot of light on sort of the regulatory perspective. We're running out of time, but I'm going to steal just one more minute and ask Khadijah a question. And it's kind of an expansion question, a product expansion question, which is, how do you reach people who still strongly believe in cash payments? And I think there's a lot of conversation in terms of offline payments, So what's Paystack's perspective on that? Like, how do you sort of like grab those people and onboard them?
Yeah, yeah, thanks for that. It's an interesting question because for companies like Paystack, we're positioned for helping you solve the payment problem after you've been able to digitize your payments, and not as much when you literally just have cash in your hand. So I guess what I'll say is different markets I've seen different approaches in different markets. In South Africa, for example, you can walk into several retail outlets and convert your cash to a voucher, even if you don't have a bank account, or even if you don't want to transact with a bank or mobile money account. And then you can spend that voucher across a plethora of e-commerce suites, online maybe with a physical device in a store. But other than that, we're seeing like a very, what's the word? We're seeing agent networks grow and scale very quickly in other places like Nigeria. What was I reading yesterday where the numbers were like pretty impressive, just comparing this year alone up till September to previous years. So I think people are learning to transact as best as they can in the offline space without necessarily having to handle cash. But there's still a very wide gap between the number of people that have their funds in some digital form or the other and those that don't. So ultimately, Paystack will help you facilitate the payment if you have a digital store of value, whether it's in a wallet or mobile money system or bank account system, and then we can take it from there onwards. I wonder if that answered your question sufficiently well.
It does, and it really reflects sort of the reality of the situation. You know, we're trying to move towards more and more digital payments, but there's a lot of payment right now that's still in cash, and so there's work to be done on the technology side, but there's also work to be done on the merchant and consumer sides to actually move towards a digital world. I want to say thank you so much, Khadijah, to Wiza, to Nkebet, and also, of course, to Juliet, who couldn't join us for this Q&A, but who generously, all of you for sharing your time with us. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand it back to Koromone to take the rest of the day forward.